Hello Year 10, welcome to this homework video. Today we're going to complete our work on Nazi policy towards young people. We're going to do two tasks in your workbook, 2.10 and 2.11. As part of this, we're going to practice our technique at comparing interpretations. So over the last couple of lessons in class, we've been looking at Nazi youth policy. We've looked at youth organisations like the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls, and we've also looked at the changes which the Nazis made to schools and the curriculum. In this homework, we're going to look at how Germans reacted to Nazi youth policies, and they reacted in different ways, so we're going to use the scale which you can see in front of you. Some Germans opposed Nazi youth policies. Other Germans went along with them or conformed to expectations. And some Germans enthusiastically supported Nazi youth policies. Now, the way that German young people reacted changed over time, and this is something that you need to be aware of. At first, many young Germans joined up to these youth organisations enthusiastically. Then in 1936, it became compulsory to join. So in other words, the law said that you had to be a member. And so it was very difficult not to join. So almost all young people had to sign up. However, by the end of the 1930s, as war approached, youth organisations became unpopular with many of their members. And there were two reasons for this. Firstly, as the war approached, youth organisations became more focused on war training. Many young boys found this less enjoyable. And secondly, as the war approached, many of the older boys left the Hitler Youth to go to the army. This left behind just the younger members. Many of the younger boys found that they were being bossed around now by other boys who were not much older than themselves, and they resented this, and that made the youth organisations less popular. So in your first task today, you're going to look at some examples of how Germans reacted to Nazi youth policies. So you have a set of sources in your workbook in Information 2.9, and you're going to need to find those. Here's the first one in your pack, Source 15. And the first step in this activity is that you're going to categorise these sources. You're going to decide whether they show opposition, conformity, or enthusiasm. Now, in the case of Source 15, this source is made by somebody who was in the Hitler Youth as a young boy, and he's recalling his experiences. And as you can see, he quite enjoyed being in the Hitler Youth. So for this source, this shows that he responded with enthusiasm. So I'm going to put him in that category. I'm also going to look for why he was so enthusiastic. And as you can see, I've managed to find some reasons in this source. This boy was enthusiastic about the Hitler Youth because he liked the comradeship, the friendship. He was really inspired by the idea of loyalty and honour, and he really enjoyed the activities like the trips into the countryside and the sports activities. So let's look at how to lay out your work. Firstly, you're going to categorise the sources. So look, I'm going to put source 15 here because he was enthusiastic. And then underneath that, I'm going to write down some of the reasons I found for why he was enthusiastic. And I found several, so here they are. Don't panic though if you only get one reason in the source. You might not get so much for all of the sources. So you're ready now to complete the rest of the task. So remember, you have a whole little pack of sources in 2.9, and your job now is to put them into your table. You need to pause the video and do that, and then when you're done, hit play, and we're going to move forward to the next part of the activity. In the next stage of our activity, we're going to practice comparing two interpretations. So here we have two interpretations written by historians, and they're both about Nazi youth groups. You need to read both of those first before we move on. So pause the video now and do that. Okay, so I want you now to think about what is the main difference between these two interpretations. I'm going to show you some clues in a moment, so you might want to pause the video unless you need the clues. Here are three possible options. Okay, so I think the difference between these two interpretations is C. They disagree about how popular the groups were. You're ready now to write up the first part of this task. So you have a little framework like this in your workbook that I want you to complete. And as you can see, I've started the first line for you. Now you're going to need to summarise the view in interpretation 1, and you're going to choose a little quote to go with that. And then you're going to do the same for interpretation 2. You're going to summarise it and give a little quote. When you're done, hit play and we'll do the last step in the activity. In the next step of our activity, we're going to think about why do the interpretations differ? And the answer to this is always because they place weight on different evidence. These two historians have chosen to look at different evidence when writing their interpretations. Let me show you what I mean. Looking back at the sources in Information 2.9, here's what I want you to do. I want you to link each of our two interpretations to one of the sources which the historian might have used. So interpretation 1 said that the youth groups were very, very popular. And I think that might be based on source 15, which is all about how young people were enthused by the activities. Interpretation 1 might have been based on source 18 as well, because that source is all about how young people enjoyed the drill and the uniform and camp life. Have a look now at interpretation 2. Which of the sources do you think this historian based her interpretation on? You might want to pause the video and do that, and then hit play when you're ready to go. And now you're ready for your last task. So you're going to complete this explanation of why the two interpretations differ. I've started the answer for you. All you need to do is match interpretation 1 to one of the sources, take a quote from the source and explain how it supports interpretation 1. And then you're going to do the same for interpretation 2. So match it to a source, take a quote from the source and explain how that supports interpretation 2. When you're done, your homework is complete and I'll look forward to seeing you next lesson.